New Zealanders are consuming around 6 billion litres of petrol and diesel each year. For many families and businesses, it is indeed a core expense. Given this, it's simply not acceptable that we're unable to say with any certainty that New Zealanders are paying a fair price for fuel, something that emerged as a consequence of the study in 2017. As you will recall, I expressed my concern in early November about the price of petrol and the impact this was having on household budgets. Unfortunately, we, of course, cannot control the international price of petrol, which was obviously one of the factors in the recent spike in prices. However, we can ensure that there is good competition locally and address underlying concerns the government has around margins and pricing variability. Between the week ended 5 October to the week ended 23 November, the price of petrol has fallen 32.57 cents to roughly $2.14, a 13% fall. Importer margins also fell in that period, but by a smaller amount of 5%. Despite these falls, there remain underlying issues of concern. As at quarter 2, 2018, the International Energy Agency had New Zealand as the most expensive country in the OECD on a pre-tax basis for premium petrol. And we were ranked the second most expensive country in the OECD on a pre-tax basis for regular petrol. 10 years ago, you'll recall me pointing out recently that 10 years ago we were amongst the lowest in the OECD for our pre-tax fuel price. And despite recent price drops, there remain disparities between prices at the pump in the lower North Island, for instance, and the South Island to the rest of the country. My concern around transparency and competition in the petrol market still stands, which is why this study is so important. We do need definitive answers. I'm pleased the Commerce Commission will be getting this study underway as quickly as possible. New Zealanders do deserve peace of mind that the price they're paying at the pump is fair and that the market is operating effectively. I'll now hand over to Commerce and Consumer Affairs Minister Chris Farfoy to provide further details about the study.
Thank you, Prime Minister. As you heard the Prime Minister say, our ability to conduct market studies is an important new feature of our competition oversight regime. It's about ensuring everyday New Zealanders are getting a fair deal and honest businesses are able to thrive. And the government has selected the retail fuel market as our first market study. This is a market study that is hugely important to consumers and to our economy, given the extent to which we rely on fuel and on the size of the market. There are existing indications of competition issues in the retail fuel market that are of concern to the government. And this includes petrol and diesel importer margins more than doubling over the past decade, a significant difference in the price of fuel across the country that cannot be explained by transportation costs, with greater variations in price occurring over the last 10 years, and a review conducted by the previous government which did not get to the heart of competition issues. It couldn't definitively confirm that fuel prices in New Zealand were reasonable, though it did find it had reason to believe that they were not. The Commerce Commission will be undertaking a full and thorough analysis into competition into the retail fuel market, and now has the power to compel companies to provide information, and this will enable us to better understand the market conditions and determine whether consumers' interests are being promoted at present, and if not, what actions need to be taken. The Commerce Commission will have 12 months to complete the study and report back. It will also be required to publish and consult on a draft competition report. The terms of reference for the market study will be published in the Gazette on Wednesday, and the Commerce Commission will start the study from then. And an announcement by the Commerce Commission providing further information about the process is expected later this week.
All right, happy to take questions. Look, this is the indication that we've had that from the Commerce Commission. Is my understanding that this is the length of time that they feel is required. Obviously, we haven't had market studies undertaken of this nature to date in New Zealand, but when you look at Australia, for instance, theirs have taken anywhere between 6 and 18 months, as I understand, so that's probably not an unreasonable expectation from the Commerce Commission. Do I want things to happen more quickly? Absolutely. What I've asked relevant ministers to do is to be prepared for any recommendations that might be made by the Commerce Commission. There is a suggestion that a draft report may, for instance, be available potentially within 9 months, but I want to make sure that we are ready to roll when the Commerce Commission makes its recommendations known. Sorry? Potentially we could. Essentially what I want to make sure is that we are ready to move and act as quickly as we can, depending on, of course, on what the Commerce Commission finds. I don't want to preempt that, but if they make a case, we want to make sure that we're ready to go.
What if you do find that it's fair and there is competitive behaviour, because you personally stake your reputation on this, like personally find
Look, I've certainly shared a view that from what I've seen and from what the stats tell us, that from 2008 we went from having some of the lowest pre-tax fuel prices to now amongst some of the highest. You know, there's questions to be asked, and I'm pleased we're asking them. We need, I think, the Commerce Commission to help put to bed some of these issues.
The Commerce Commission's chairman actually came out last week and said that 12 months would put the regulator under considerable pressure. Is there any scope at all to potentially widen it if they're under considerable pressure here?
I think, as I said last week, they're no strangers to pressure. It's their first market study, so I can understand that they do feel a little pressured, but it is a significant market to look at, so a decent amount of time is going to be needed. As I say, we'll let them kick off the study. It's their first one, and we'll see how they're progressing.
Is there any scope to giving them a little bit more budget or more resources so they won't be under as much pressure?
We'll see how they go.
Jessica.
drop down to?
To the fluctuations that we've seen recently. Look, there has been changes in the price of oil, but at the same time, even while that's been occurring, we've seen huge variation at a regional level. And I think that rightly has led questions to be asked. Even in 2017, when some initial work was done, the finding was that they couldn't give assurances that New Zealanders were paying a fair price. And so that's what we need to put to bed.
So do you think your attention on this has shifted that in any way?
It would be purely speculative of me to say so, but I think what we do need is a rigorous look at what's happening in the fuel market, and that's what this is going to allow us to do.
What kind of action is the government willing to take?
No, to answer your question, Hamish, I do not.
The motorists are being fleeced.
No.
You said that we could expect action next year.
Look, certainly on the timelines, my expectation would have been that we would have been able to do this more quickly. I have to take heed of the advice that we're receiving from the Commerce Commission on that. They want to do it properly, and I have to let them do their job. What I have asked is that ministers do as much work as they can to be prepared for the findings of the Commerce Commission in the intervening period. So certainly I would have liked to have happened more quickly.
What kind of action are you willing to take? What could that intervention look like? How far is the government willing to go?
What we have to be prepared for are potentially, I think, probably around competition issues, but we need to let the Commerce Commission do its job as well.
The 2017 study found that in 2008, margins might have been unacceptably tight, and retail fuel companies might have been underinvesting in infrastructure at that time. Is there a concern that if we sort of look at 2008 as a target here, that we might get into the situation again where they are underinvesting in essential infrastructure to the point where it could potentially become unsafe?
No, I don't think it's a matter of us or the Commerce Commission looking at targets. You'll see from the terms of reference really the scope of the inquiry and where they'll be focusing their minds.
Did you talk to the Commerce Commission before you came out and said that consumers were being fleeced?
No.
If it's found to be fair, would you then maybe look at tax?
To look at tax in terms of, you just need to.
Petrol companies are found charging a fare.
Of course, when the original conversation was being had, people were certainly asking questions around the contribution of excise. The point that we made at the time was that if you look at New Zealand's pre-tax price 10 years ago versus where we are now, that raises questions. Equally, our total tax on fuel is still the 6th lowest in the OECD, and you've seen huge variation now in the price since we were having that conversation some months ago and what people have seen now, and that's after we've obviously had the regional fuel tax and excise come in. I still think there are questions to be answered, and we're not going to step away from that regardless of what's happened to the price since.
When you say you're getting ministers to do work in preparation, is that based on the assumption that the oil companies are fleecing consumers?
Oh, that's based on some of the issues that are being raised around, look, the variation, the regional variation that you see. Some have already claimed that there's issues around access issues. And so MB has acknowledged that might be an area where work could be done. And so just making sure that the department is in a good position to work quickly if the Commerce Commission gives them the nod that that is indeed an issue. No. Of course, we've always said we need to make sure that that is indeed, an area of concern. What I don't want is us to have a report in 12 months' time and then be in a position where it takes us another 12 months to undertake work. So we won't get ahead of ourselves, but I do want us to be ready.
Looking at the regional prices, it seems as though the oil companies are trying to equalise the Auckland fuel tax. Is that fair?
I actually wouldn't argue that to be the case. I've seen significant variation in pricing. In some cases, there would have been periods of time where Wellington, for instance, was paying a higher price than Auckland was, even with the regional fuel tax. So I think that regional variation is one of the issues that has prompted us to seek this work to be done.
If you wanted to give people across the board relief, you could just put a freeze on the next 2 excise tax increases under your government. Why not?
Again, when you look at what we've seen in recent times, I mean, we've seen huge variation, a decrease recently coming off a high point. You know, what I want to ensure is that simply because we've seen that decrease now, we don't take our foot off the accelerator when it comes to investigating what's happening in our fuel market. There obviously have been significant changes in the last 10 years that goes well beyond anything that's happened in tax, and I want to get to the bottom of it.
What's to stop your oil companies just keeping the price low and ironing out the regional differences for the next year while the study goes on?
Oh, look, ultimately the Commerce Commission is going to have the access they need to get into the bottom of any behaviour that might be going on in that regard. Sorry, what was that?
Are you convinced that the Auckland fuel tax isn't being spread from areas where there's significant
Yeah.
competition to areas where there isn't?
Hamish, I would only be speaking from anecdote, and I'm loath to do that. But as my colleagues will know, I've become somewhat obsessive in my observation of what's happening with fuel prices around the country, and I haven't seen that consistently occurring. But look, anyone could produce probably any fuel price from anywhere that might demonstrate something different. But in some cases, that might be down to an issue of competition. That's what we need the Commerce Commission to get to the bottom of.
Is there any chance you'd freeze the excise tax? Is there any chance that you'd freeze the excise tax?
Look, as I've already said, we could have said, look, the 3.5 cent excise won't go ahead, but we would be no better off necessarily in terms of investing in our roads, which is where all of that excise goes. Well, even then we've seen in that recent period of time when people have been seeking that, it's a significant drop, much further back from what people have believed to have been excise increases. We need to keep in mind excise goes directly to improving our roads, to transport improvements, to safety improvements. We take that away, we remove our ability to continually do that work on behalf of our motorists.
So yes, those excise tax increases will definitely go ahead.
I need to get to the bottom of what's happening in our fuel market, and as people will have seen with the recent changes, what they've seen change at the pump has not been all down to excise.
So the Commerce Commission has a budget of $1.5 million per annum to carry out the market study. They believe it will take up a fair chunk of that.
Is it going to be entirely transparent given the commercial sensitivities involved with some of this information?
So can you repeat
Will
the
it be
question?
entirely transparent?
Will the study be entirely transparent? Will the public have access to the information given that some of the stuff may be market sensitive commercial information?
I'm sure that there will be some entities in that market who will, when we ask for information and now they are compelled to give it, who may make requests for it to be kept confidential because of the market sensitivity around that. That's going to be a judgment call for the Commerce Commission to make, but we expect those requests to be made.
So how many market studies can the Commerce Commission do at one time?
It's obviously a new power. This market study is going to be significant given the size of the industry. When we first scoped the market study, they said a small to medium market study could cost anywhere between $500,000 to $750,000. So, but this is a large one. The annual appropriation is $1.5 million, and as I say, they expect it to take up quite a big chunk of that. So, this is the first one, and we expect it to keep the runway full for some time.
So, why not give them more so they can do other studies? Because many would say supermarkets, banks, insurance have also got problems.
As I say, this is the first one. They are only just getting staff in order to fulfil this duty. I think we should let them get on with the first one. There are other areas of competition that there is concern about, but I think we should let this one get underway and see how they go. It's going to take 12 months. There's been comment about that already this afternoon, but I think that's about the right time to make sure we have a good look at this rather large market.
So you mentioned the runway. So what are the next industries on?
We'll come to those decisions when we've had those decisions around the cabinet table.
Are you getting a few tips from colleagues about what those industries are being?
They're being very helpful.
Of course, ministers can nominate, but there's a process then that the minister needs to go through.
The Commerce Commission, do you get to come up with one by itself, or sort of how it can go?
Yeah, look, as you say, they can self-initiate. We've chosen to choose this one because of the significance of the issues and concern for the government. We'll get this one out of the way, and if they think there are other markets that need to be looked at, they can self-initiate.
Probably a shared priority, though.
About those other potential industries that you say, Prime Minister, it's a process that
Yeah.
you probably believe
I made my nomination very public, that is fair to say, but there is a process the minister goes through. I made it public that I would be nominating the fuel industry.
I think it's ironic that the Commerce Commission is investigating a lack of competition in the market when just a few years ago they allowed the biggest fuel company to buy the second biggest.
I'm not sure we want to necessarily relitigate decisions that they made in the past, but ultimately we are asking them indeed to look at competition issues. That is our expectation. We need to let them get on with the job rather than reflecting on the history of what may have got us to this point.